Yeah. I know. I've still got to hit another couple of buttons before I show up on camera. I get that. Hi. We're a half hour early because of things. John here, you there. And I was telling our first guest who's going to be here momentarily that we're probably going to break the sound barrier today and go for 3 hours because we have that much going on, because of this World Cup thing and having all of the reaction and getting ready for the world that doesn't stop. And so it's like a review and a preview and it's a bunch of things. So here's the rundown quickly so we can go to our first guest. All right. So first guest, obviously, he's first. That's coming up in a sec. 9:05 under the normal start time. Kennesaw State's Dr. Leonard Jackson, who is a professor in hospitality management. He's going to look at the World Cup impact for Atlanta from the hospitality perspective, saturation, how many hotel rooms, what it means, what you learn, all that kind of stuff. And we get his feedback because he's a soccer guy, too. We'll find out what he thinks about the champ. 9:30, we're going to hear from Braden Dunham. Caught up with him at camp yesterday in Utah as the USYNT is getting ready for the CONCACAF U20s. I think they're heading down to Mexico today. It serves as qualification for the U20 World Cup. U.S. gets Haiti in Puebla on Saturday night. So that's at 9:30. 10 o'clock means that KCD drops by. Casey White's going to join us before she hops on a plane. We may talk everything from NWSL to MLS to whatever's on her mind because she was host at a conference in the Northeast, and I think she actually got to see the last game of the World Cup. So that's 10 o'clock. 10:30, we check in at Notre Dame. Dr. Michael Morris, Morehouse professor Howard Jean Denis on the Urban Poverty and Business Initiative and the local Aspiring Community Entrepreneurs Program. Support from Coca-Cola has helped that out. We find out how that impacts Atlanta. And then at 11 o'clock, Tuskegee women's soccer head coach Emmanuel Stevens lets us know what it's like to build a program from scratch. There's your guests. Here's speaking of bat and leadoff, Will Palaszczuk, Willie P. How are you, partner?
What's going on, John? I hope that I get as close, if not closer, to a World Cup final than I was on Sunday, because I was actually in New Jersey during the final for a family event, and I had to fly out of Newark Airport while the final was going on. No, thankfully, I got to see the whole thing.
Okay.
But at the same, my flight was actually, to make a short story long, it was a 7:30 flight that didn't go off until 11:30, which again is a whole nother story in American aviation. But I'm sitting there and I'm watching the second half and extra time in a bar that's got a bunch of Spanish fans and a lady in behind me who's standing up praying in Arabic saying, "Please Messi, please Messi, please God, please Messi."
Wow.
So I had the dichotomy in stereo. And when it's interesting when you're in an airport, all the airport restaurants or whatever are on different feeds.
Mm-hmm.
So I think ours was the first. So we saw the Spain goal first.
Oh no!
And then the restaurant over here sees it, and then you hear them cheer, and then the restaurant at the top of it was a surreal feeling.
Oh God.
But yeah, no, we had a family thing up in New Jersey this weekend that I did not realize. You know how one brain works and the other brain doesn't want to communicate.
Well, I would have to have.
I'm thinking, I'm sitting here and thinking, why in the world did this flight cost over $1,000? Why was this hotel so hard to procure? And then I'm sitting there Thursday night and talking to my wife, and I said, "Honey, I'm so stupid. It's the same weekend as the World Cup final." And she's like, "Yeah, I realized that a couple of days ago. Why did it take you so long?" I'm like, "Because I got 3 different things going on. 5,000 baseline stressors, but I'm excited because we're back tomorrow night. I'm very, very happy."
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm right there with you. My golden retriever brain's bad enough as it is. And then to be discussing, World Cup and Major League Soccer and the U20s and what have I forgotten? Look, I'm going to break the fourth wall. No, I never do that on the show. Exactly. Here's some of my notes for the morning. There's some of my notes. There's some of my notes. And then that's on one. And then obviously time codes on another. Obviously one device open here. Second device open here. Caffeine off to my right. Notes behind me. So if I find all my notes in my sequence for the show today, I'm in great shape.
It's okay. I have 2 days. I have 2 days ago's caffeine sitting next to me off screen. So
there's go. Man, that's strong. We brought you in here to talk about Charlotte.
Sure.
So everyone, it looks like. Well, actually, let's go with the exceedingly generic question off the top. How was the World Cup break for resting folks and assemblage and getting everything squared away for this run before we get into other runs here at the end of this season?
Well, Charlotte did kind of limp to the finish at the end of the pre-World Cup portion. They were dealing with a couple of injuries in the back line. Harry Toffolo was hurt, and then his replacement ended up getting a red card in Charlotte's final game. Toffolo is back, which is encouraging. He played full 90 minutes in Charlotte's friendly last week against Austin. That was a closed-door affair. They also did not have Nathan Byrne available to them at the end, and so it forced the full debut of Will Cleary, somebody who I think Charlotte's very, very high on, the kid out of Stanford. Very, very smart kid, and I think he had a very admirable debut, but I think asking too much out of him too early would be something that might derail him a little bit. So it was good to get Nate back. There were a couple of guys who picked up some nicks and niggles over the course of the time that they were getting back to ramp up. Edon Toklamati was dealing with a bit of a hamstring injury, but he was back in full training when we saw him yesterday. And Nath also still trying to get himself back full off the hamstring injury, but he was back in full training as well. As far as everybody else goes, the only real injury to Charlotte right now is Aaron John took a really, I think, gross shoulder injury during the break. They're hoping to that it heals without surgery. It's one of those things that kind of was a freak accident that took place during training over the break. That's really the only injury really to speak of. David Schnegg is dealing with a groin, but he's not even eligible for Wednesday's game anyway, so he's not necessarily a high concern in Charlotte's plans. And the only other real absence is an unfortunate one for Charlotte, and their new signing, Alan St. Maximin, is still working through the diplomacy, as it were, because sometimes some teams get visas quickly, and sometimes some teams' visas don't get visas quickly. I don't know why the rhyme or reason is for it, but it is one of the things we have to deal with in this league. But Charlotte adds a really dynamic player who at some point will contribute for Charlotte FC in a great deal, we hope. But doesn't look like he's going to be on the field for us tomorrow night in Uptown.
At some point, he'll contribute. It's a contribution to be named later.
At some point.
Yes, because of the in of Alan St. Maximin, that meant there was an out. And sure. when you look at, I guess I don't know if legacy is the right word, but I guess just the time spent from Wilf Zaha in Charlotte, how would you characterize it with him now out back to Europe and St. Maximin coming in at some point?
I would call it complicated, to say the least. And I think it's almost kind of the story of a lot of our designated players. When you think about, Karol Swiderski came in here and I think performed admirably as our first DP. I don't know if he had necessarily the personality to have that on his shoulders. And this is something that our GM has talked about a lot. He is a fan of being able to spend unlimited money on players, but he's not a fan of what the designated player tag does to some players. And I don't think that was necessarily the case with Wilfried Zaha. I just think that where Wilf's game is and where he thinks his game is are in two different places. And I think this is something that every footballer goes through. He's going to be 34 in November. The tricks and moves that he made when he was in his prime at Crystal Palace are things that he probably can't do now. And he found himself a lot of times within 2 and 3 defenders trying to do things that bordered on the crazy for even the youngest of players and in prime of players. And the being fouled a lot was something that, while at times it was a weapon, at times it was Charlotte's worst enemy because it let out the venom that was the Zaha temper. And, I found it interesting when we were talking with St. Maximin, for example. Somebody asked him about Zaha being fouled as much and whether or not that attention will come to him. And St. Maximin, and I'm paraphrasing here, he said something to the effect of, hey, I know when I got 3 dudes around me, I got to pass the ball. And that's because somebody's open. So if I got to do that and it helps us win, I'm good with it. And he said, my job's not to get fouled. My job's to make people miss. So it's one of those things where I think he maybe brings on a fresher attitude than Wilf Zaha did. I think Zaha's belly aching with the referees did kind of wear on fans, and it brought them to think about Enzo Capetti's time here. And to be clear, neither player is in the same stratosphere in terms of ability. I think we saw Enzo Capetti bellyache and whine and not really put up the numbers. Zaha put up numbers, at least in his first season. I would say the numbers kind of trailed off a little bit, unfortunately, in the first half of this year. He didn't see the goal contribution that I thought you would see in the first half of the season, and I think that's what led to the conversation being had about, hey, you know what? We want to get you back at a certain level, but in terms of what you're going to be at age 34, the last thing Charlotte FC wants to be doing is paying a designated player who's a diminishing asset. And so they wanted to get younger at the position. I think they parted amicably. There is a rush of South American teams that are trying to vie for Wilf Zaha's services. And then I saw a report this morning that a couple of EFL championship teams have kicked the tires on Zaha. I think there's a reason you haven't seen him, you haven't seen a big rush of teams necessarily to sign him right away, because I think the valuation, or his valuation of where he thinks he is probably not on par with where the market sees him at this point. So I wish him well, but I think St. Maximin's going to do things that I think maybe fit this league a lot better, because this league, as you know, John, it begs you to take on defenders. And if there's one guy who knows how to do that, it is Alan St. Maximin, with the way that he is an incredible dribbler. He's one of the most dynamic take-on players that we've seen in the world. His numbers rank up there with Messi and Neymar in their primes when it comes to take-on winnability. The biggest question when it comes to him is, will the counting stats look like a designated player's counting stats? Because that's the one thing that's kind of been the issue with me seeing him in the past, is that he doesn't put up the big, heavy goal numbers that some of the other DPs have come into this league look like. But the thing I love that he said was that he wants to be a club legend. He wants to be somebody who creates a legacy with this club. He's coming here on a 3-year contract, which is one of the largest contracts ever given to a Charlotte FC DP. And he says, I want to be here beyond that 3-year contract. He could be somebody who is kind of in the vein of a Hani Mukhtar, somebody who was a, overlooked and not necessarily as known player coming into this league, and somebody who takes the league by storm. Charlotte has not really had, outside of Pep Biel, that one designated player who has staying power. They've had a lot of movement in terms of people coming in and out of that position, in what our GM calls the hardest position to field in an MLS roster.
So then what I would posit, we talk a lot about, and this, you and I talk about it a lot. We talk about it here at SDH, the idea of positional gravity. And Alan St. Maximin mentions that in the conversations and the back and forth that you've had, that I think that DP numbers can come at you in two ways. I think that obviously a DP number, and like I said, this is in massive quotations, underline, exclamated, bold-faced, italicized, pick your font. Where if you're the DP and you're getting an ish load of goals and you're making a lot of goal contributions, then I think it can come at you in two ways. I think that because of positional gravity, you can help out others and boost their numbers. But I know that we gravitate toward the idea of a DP sitting there going, well, his numbers stink, but you got to look at the context of it all. If he's helping out the others around him, I think that your DP-ness is just as effective. Who would benefit the most, you think, from positional gravity when Alan St. Maximin walks in the door?
I mean, Idon Toklamati is the first thing that comes to mind for me, and that's somebody that was name-checked by Zoran Cornetta, our GM, when we talked to him about the signing. He said, look, if Alan St. Maximin is going to get double digits in goals or double digits in assists, that's fine and well and dandy, but we need multiple guys to do that across our thing. We don't have a guy who we think is capable of having a 20-goal season and winning the Golden Boot. They want to be a team that gets contributions from multiple different assets. And I think any team is wanting to do that. And, whether that's Kerwin Vargas on the other side, who's benefiting from long switches from Alan St. Maximin, whether that's Pep Biel losing some attention that is paid towards him because people are dazzled by what St. Maximin does on the ball. And so I think it comes down to the fact that what he's able to do is going to draw attention. Now, will that attention result in him scoring goals? They believe so. Will it result in him getting assists on goals? They're believing that that's probably going to be more so the case. He's probably going to have a higher assist number than goals number, and I don't think they're upset about that, because you have Toklamati, who's a brilliant finisher in front, who does a lot of thankless running. You've got Pep Biel, who's also probably the best finisher on the team. And I think also the biggest thing, and I think this is what maybe informs Charlotte FC's next move, is can they find another body to be inside the box, whether that's the person who plays Jabril Gianni's position or Jabril Gianni himself, whether that's Ashley Westwood joining the fray a lot more as well. They have not had, really, in the 5 years that I've done these games for them, they've not had the person to provide really consistent service with the support on the back end to be able to get the finishing that they really want to score the kind of goals it takes to win in this league. As we know, this league is a goal-scoring league. It's not a defensive, win 1-0 and hope to goodness gracious you can suffer and defend for 90 minutes. As much as Dean Smith says we want to be difficult to beat, the offensive talent in this league is in the front of the field. And I think he understands that. And I think they understand that they need to be more threatening and more clinical on target. They need to be able to get more chances and result in those chances. And I think, too, St. Maximin will allow, I think, the other pieces on this team to maybe breathe a little bit more freely, most awfully. And also, it will also give him a chance to resuscitate his career, because if you know anything about the way his career has gone over the course of the last year and a half, he was at Fenerbahce after leaving Newcastle for Saudi Arabia, because he had to leave Newcastle because of the financial fair play restrictions that had unfortunately enveloped that club. So he goes to Saudi Arabia. He goes to Fenerbahce. It falls apart under Jose Mourinho. He goes to Club America. Apparently, there was some sort of racist type stuff happening with him and his kids while he was at Club America. So he left there quickly, went to play a half year at Lens in France. Felt like he rediscovered something there. They won the Coupe de France, and it almost kind of feels like this is coming in the same vein as a lot of Charlotte FC's designated players, somebody who was a depressed asset who can kind of regain and reclaim some form. Pep Biel has done that. Wilfried Zaha did that to a certain degree, and they're hoping the same thing can happen here with St. Maximin and Charlotte.
Okay, so you mentioned Kerwin Vargas. I was looking on the interwebs, which we always know 100% of the time is that bastion of journalistic integrity. And I was seeing that there was the possibility that Kerwin Vargas might be being looked at by Atletico Paranaense as a part of the ins and outs here in this window. You mentioned what needs to be done from a front office perspective. Have you heard anything about this Kerwin Vargas idea or anything else?
I've seen the same reports you have, John. We keep asking the front office, we keep asking Dean Smith about Kerwin Vargas. Nothing is done. He is at training. He is expected to feature on Wednesday. Some of the reports that I keep seeing mention that Kerwin probably is being allowed to stay here a little longer. And again, that's from the outside reports. That's nothing I'm hearing inside the building. But I think a lot of this comes down to Charlotte's roster's full right now, and their season is restarting. And the last thing that they want to find is themselves between a rock and a hard place, because they already lost one winger in Wilfried Zaha. The second winger that they brought in has not been cleared by visa with St. Maximin. So in terms of that they do not want to find themselves with their pants down, so to speak, to try and make sure that they can still win games. So I think it's a situation of they're probably waiting for St. Maximin's paperwork to clear, maybe trying to identify another winger. There's also, the curious case of Liel Abada, who was shopped around, at least reportedly, around a bunch of EFL championship level teams and some other teams across the European side as well, as somebody who, quite frankly, would bring Charlotte FC the most bang for their buck in terms of being able to sell him and bring in a designated player who can contribute at a higher level. So I think there's that evaluation process going on right now in terms of, hey, do you bring in another right winger? Do you go and bring in a DP attacking midfielder / box-to-box midfielder? I think right now it comes down to if there is a deal that's done with Kerwin Vargas, it's not done because Charlotte hasn't figured out how they're replacing him on the roster, first off, and also what they're trying to do business-wise with Liel Abada potentially, because of the fact that when it comes down to it, because of his DP slot, he will bring in, obviously, a player of a different caliber.
Any clue how much within the league, and this is the Garber Bucks question, any clue how much navigating you have when it comes to Garber Bucks and Gam and Tam and sliding all that stuff in? Because we can talk DPs all day, and as long as Charlotte's 3-3, right? Or are they 2-4?
3-3, yes.
Okay, so Charlotte's 3-3, and I mean by that is, for those just hanging in, 3 DPs, 3 U22s.
And those are all full.
Right. So how much GAM space is there to help navigate buying folks down if you need to, that kind of stuff? How much financial navigability is there? Wow, I pulled that word out. How much navigating is there? How much breathing room is there when it comes to bringing in players and figuring out how they would all fit under the cap?
There is not a lot of room based
Yeah.
on the last look that we got from the roster profiles. They were not in as dire a situation as they were, say, at this point a year ago. They used their last available GAM last year at the basically primary transfer window deadline because of, once again, it seemed problems at the back. They had to go and get Jaquil Marshall-Ruddy after the neck injury to Nathan Byrne, and they basically used their last available GAM to get him on a loan. Charlotte had at the check at the end of the 2026 primary transfer window, they had $75,000 available in GAM, so that's not a lot.
Wow, that really means that your capologists and your front office really got to know what they're doing. Will Palaszczuk joining us as we broadcast from the Kaiser Permanente studios here, breaking everything down when it comes to Oppo Research and Charlotte and the matchup coming up tomorrow in the midweek. You mentioned defense, so let's go defense. Christian Kalina continues to stand on his head, and I'm hoping that he's okay with all the blood rushing down as it always does with all the saves that he makes by standing on his head. When you've stared at this defense and the back line this season, what has stood out to you? And have you had any thought bubbles and or questions about what you've been seeing? Because, right now, middle of the pack in the Eastern Conference.
Well, the thing about it is, John, the defense is not at where it was 2 years ago when Kalina was the goalkeeper of the year. So that part of it was, I think, a little bit jarring to see. We all kind of wondered what it was going to look like without Adilson Malanda. And they brought in a player who I think is really, really nice in Morrison Ajiman. He came in relatively raw, but he's learning on the job. And both the front office and head coach Dean Smith have opined that they probably had to play him a lot quicker than they wanted to because they never got Henry Kessler healthy during the first half of the season. He was expected to be somebody who contributed and was that right side defender alongside Tim Ream. I will say Tim had an uneven first half. I think there were moments of brilliance alongside some of the moments like we saw in the U.S. men's national team game where, backtracking is not Tim's forte. As long as he keeps the player in front of him, I think he's definitely still solid. And his distribution of the ball is about the best you can have from anybody in the back line in the league, or the best line on this team, I should say. So from that part of it, I think is really, really good to see from him in terms of a leadership standpoint. But at the same point in time, you wonder just how much of a shelf life is left on the U.S. men's international. So I think the center back thing is just still something they're working through. I'm wondering, with the congestion of matches, they're going to play 8 games between Leagues Cup and the league schedule in the month of August. You're definitely probably going to see Henry Kessler play at some point. Andrew Privet has still been fighting it a little bit. I will say he looked better in the last game we played before the break against New England than he had at any point in time really before that. He had a couple of games in the opening portion of the season that did not cover himself in glory, and that was what kind of led to instead of using Privet at the right side defensive position, using Morrison Ajiman, and Morrison has been so good that he's basically not been knocked out. The injury to Harry Toffolo, I think, also messed with some things as well. While I love David Schnegg as a player, and I thought that was a shrewd move getting him off waivers, he's, I think, more offensively oriented than Toffolo is. I think Toffolo is a better all-around fullback. And Nathan Byrne, I think, also, too, has had some moments where maybe the age is catching up to him a little bit. And he was also, again, hampered with a hamstring. So I think they're still trying to figure it out. They're still trying to put it together. I think Kalina has been asked to do a lot. He has not had what I would consider to be the blunder type moments en masse. There have been a couple that you would point out and say, oh, he was in the wrong position. I don't want to say he's had a full howler to say this, so to speak, but there have been a couple of moments where you look at it and say maybe he is suffering the barrage of shots is probably giving him a little bit more than he can handle. I think also I find it curious that after a couple of years where it felt like he was maybe a snub for the All-Star game, Dean Smith does not select him when he has the opportunity to do so, and I think that's indicative of the fact that while his save number is high, I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that they just have not been as solid defensively as Dean Smith's teams in his first couple of seasons have been here at Charlotte.
But then how much of that is what's in front of him and how much of that is Kalina and just everything that's been at him for the last couple of years?
It's more what's in front of him, I think. And again, like I said, he hasn't played poorly. I wouldn't say he's played poorly. I just think, again, a lot of times, the numbers and metrics are where they are. He's only had 2 clean sheets this season. So I think it comes down to the fact that there have been times where he has bailed his guys out, which I think is incredibly indicative of how our season has gone. I think they have been as good as he can be, and as good as they are at denying chances. I think also the part of this that comes down to it is that we just don't see a lot of the ball. And so that puts a lot of pressure on what has to happen in terms of Charlotte FC suffering a lot. They have not been as good in the midfield, John, at taking the ball off opponents, whether that's by design from Dean Smith or whether that's by, a lack of aggressiveness from the players on the pitch and not getting the missive from the touchline. I think it's a situation where they need to come out of the gates in this second half a lot more aggressive because they do need to find a way to relieve some pressure off Kalina and relieve some pressure off that defense, because I think they are being made to play a heck of a lot more suffering type football in the first 15 games of the season than I think they wanted to by design. So I'm curious to see just how that changes because you got the one thing that is interesting about this 4-week break. You can't totally remake yourself, but you can try to hone in on things that, hey, during that first half, we didn't like. And one of the things that Dean Smith said is that, there were a lot of their performances over the course of the first 15 games that they switched off. And while their defense wasn't necessarily overall poor, there were marked moments in games where they switched off, and it led to games getting out of hand. And I think that's something that they're definitely hoping changes when it comes to restarting this second half of the season.
And we get to hang out with you and find out what's going on from the Charlotte perspective. If you would, please, sir, cut the promo as to how folks can listen to you, not just in the midweek as a part of home experiences on streaming services with contracts, but 30 hours a day, 8 days a week, 392 days a year. How do they do it?
Certainly, sir. We will have a big pregame show getting ready for that game tomorrow night, beginning at 7:30, an extended pregame show. I'll have an exclusive chat with Dean Smith on our radio flagship, 92.7 FM, WFNZ, and in stations all across the Carolinas, which will be very nice. I'm actually also hosting today and tomorrow on our flagship station from 3 until 6. You'll be able to hear that conversation with Dean Smith, and also we'll have a chance to chat with Zoran Kaneda as well on not just what's going on with Charlotte FC on the field, but what's happening in the boardroom and how potentially they are working to try and rectify that GAM situation, which is up against it, so to speak. But looking forward to the restart. Looking forward to seeing Mike and Jason in the booth tomorrow night as well. And as I always like to say, I root for you guys aside from twice a year. So hopefully, I saw the game on Friday night in Nashville, and I will say Atlanta, while the scoreline did not indicate it, I will say they looked a heck of a lot better than I had seen from a previous aspect, and the record might indicate.
Yep, defense, and they had the press conference with Junior Alonso and Paulo Diaz yesterday with Chris Henderson, and one of those two should be available in the midweek, and we'll figure it out going forward. Because as you well know, once again, how did you phrase it when it came to the administrative work from overseas and lawyers? How did you phrase it at the beginning? Do you remember?
Inconsistent diplomacy.
There we go.
Inconsistent diplomacy.
There it is. The inconsistent diplomacy is one of the aspects that Atlanta United has to deal with one of the two defensive acquisitions. I know you got to go to practice, so as always, my friend, great to see you. Thanks for batting leadoff and getting us on the right path when it comes to Charlotte and Atlanta United coming up in the midweek, sir.
Always love talking to you, John. Thank you.
There we go. It's Will Palaszczuk, everybody. And it's always great to catch up with Willie P. at Willie P. Style on the Twitters, by the way. And it's always good to catch up with him, find out what's going on up the road. I know a lot of you are heading up in that direction because 5-2-2 at home at the bank. And you've also got this all-star thing that's coming up around the corner this time next week. And so it's always going to be great to catch up with Willie P on a bunch of different fronts. But he's heading to practice. And yes, we are talking about practice. Not a game, We're just talking about practice. All right, it's 9 o'clock from the Kaiser Permanente studios. Once again, thanks to Kaiser Permanente for being great partners and friends with us here at SDH and letting us have the opportunity to tell you what's going on in and around the planet every single day that we've done things. And I think that I've got the math right, that by the end of this week, on all of our SDHness, we will have gone 54 straight days live doing stuff, whether it was for this World Cup thing or getting you ready for Atlanta United and all of that. And our next guest to start the second half of hour number 1, because we started a half hour early, but this would be the normal start time under normal circumstances. This one's kind of cool because we've been tapping the shoulder of our friends at Kennesaw State a great deal during the World Cup tournament. And we've been wondering what their perspectives are on a bunch of different things. You know, what it's stuff that you see, stuff you don't see, whether it's administrative, all the aspects, to make sure that something the size of a cup that the world is chasing in a host city goes off as well as possible. And there are a lot of different parts to it. And so what we wanted to do this time around is catch up with Dr. Leonard Jackson, professor of hospitality management, and we wanted to find out about economy and tourism when it comes to this tournament that we've had come blowing through our environments. And for this, we go to Kennesaw State University. Doc, thanks for dropping by this morning.
Oh, thank you for having me, John. Great to be with you this morning.
When now I know I was trying to find out what your playing history was, and I know that did you play intramurals at Guelph when you were a Griffin, or did that stop when you got to Guelph and did your undergrad?
Yeah, I stopped at Guelph, before Guelph actually, but I played high school soccer from as far back as I can remember, going back to, I'm thinking, 1978 World Cup.
Oh, wow.
That's what got me inspired. It's a great World Cup, and we all wanted to be like little Pelés, but also, so I grew up wanting to be the next Pelé, and I was greatly inspired by the great Argentina, Kempes. So that was in 1978. So I made my high school soccer team. So throughout high school, I was a goalkeeper.
Oh,
I was a goalkeeper.
So much like every other keeper that I know, you want to be Pele or Kempes. I see how.
Yes, I know. So later on, after I realized I was not really great on the field compared to my peers, I moved into the goal and wanted to be a Garden Banks. So Garden Banks was the greatest keeper that helped England won their first World Cup in 1966. So yes, so I gave up my dreams of becoming Pele and turned into the best version of Gordon Banks.
So when you got all of your degrees and all of your recognitions, and honestly, you've got to use the backside of the business card and another business card with all of the things that you have pursued in your time. When you found out that a World Cup was coming to this hemisphere and that Atlanta was going to be one of the host cities, what was your initial response other than, yeah, I'm not surprised?
Yeah, I was super excited because it gave us in Atlanta an opportunity to showcase our city to the world on the world's largest stage. The World Cup is the largest event globally. Every corner of the world during the World Cup, everyone stops to watch the games. And you might not have a national team in the competition, but you do have a team that you're following, or you're following a player from one of the major leagues in Europe or here in the United States. So I was very excited because it gave us a chance to unleash our amazing event ecosystem. In my opinion, we have the best event ecosystem in the world, and the World Cup gave us a chance to unleash it and showcase it to the world.
You mentioned event ecosystems, and that's a great way to kind of just break down everything that is what we don't see.
Yes.
Because you see all the stuff above the waterline, you see all of the prep, you see, fan fests and bunting and all of the preparation. And we've had discussions with folks from SCAD because they were the ones responsible from the walk-in mile about all of the signage and everything that leads everyone to venues and all this kind of stuff. But I think that from your perspective in dealing with hospitality management, you're talking about part of the infrastructure that is vital. I think that we take for granted a lot of the time, because if we didn't have a roof over our head in a room that is probably, 40 by 40 that had basic amenities, then as a host city, you'd be kind of out of luck. I mean, when it came to your initial analysis, how much of an impact were you thinking was going to be had here for hospitality and all the work that needed to be done to make sure that it was going to look as seamless as possible?
Yes, thanks, John. So because we have done it so well for a lot of mega events, it's one of the reasons why everything was so seamless for us. All the hotels executed quite well. The restaurants were prepared. The staff were extremely prepared. Our security forces, because we have had so many events in the city, they knew all the traffic patterns. So there was no chaos on the part of the planners. For attendees, it was very seamless because we had all those things in place. We had tremendous practice. So let's start off from we have the best international airport, right? So it starts from how visitors are going to come to us, right? International visitors, the best airport. We have the hotels that are ready and used to the ebb and flow of visitors coming in for events. The restaurants are also ready. And importantly, our security forces, they knew the travel patterns. So there was no bottlenecks at all in the city. Everything just moved on very seamlessly.
How many conversations are we having here to make sure that, and how many different aspects? Because you dropped 5 of them on me.
Yes.
Airport, hotel, restaurant, security, and transportation. This seems like, is there any part of this that we forgot about that makes all of this look as seamless as possible outside of those 5? I mean, or is it that the big 5 for you?
Those are the big 5. But also, let's not forget the volunteer groups, universities, for example, social organizations that step up to help plan and execute this event. So we had a lot of volunteers, but also all of the major bodies that manages hospitality and tourism in the city work in synchrony to make this happen. Cobb Travel, Atlanta Convention and Visitors Bureau, the Airport Authority. We all worked in concert to make this happen. So we were like little elves behind the scene. All of the players were working behind the scenes to make this happen. And John, this is years of planning. This is more time than we usually get to execute most of the mega events that we have held here in Atlanta. So everything was ready for the event. So I was very excited when we became one of the host cities for this global event.
Any clue how much investment was made from an infrastructure perspective? And you can take it from the big 5 if you've got a number, or if you break it down from any of those, and how cities were investing in the big 5 across the board from the 16 host cities. Any clue about how much investment there was to make sure everything looked great from an eye candy perspective and an infrastructure perspective? Any ideas?
Yeah, so the numbers are still being audited, so it would not be appropriate for me to just throw the numbers out.
Oh, come on.
Yes. I don't want to misquote any of these numbers, right? However, from the local level all the way up to the state level, tremendous investments were made in our infrastructure to make sure the infrastructure was ready. Individually, from the corporate side as well, all the hotels invested in terms of refreshing their rooms, making sure things were in place, making sure things were ready for our visitors that came to visit Atlanta. But several $1 million were spent locally at the local government, all the way up to the state level as well. We made tremendous investments.
And obviously, you're hoping to recoup that with folks coming in and visiting for however long they're going to visit. Because, if a hotel is sitting there and they're trying to, make things all shiny and new all over again, all of that infrastructure that they're looking for. And this is literally how many hotels? Any clue how many hotels we have here in the metropolitan Atlanta area?
Yeah, we have about 140, 140,000 rooms in the city. So approximately.
So 140, around 140,000 rooms.
Yes.
To service individuals over a 7-week period. And you're hoping that you're going to have some kind of turnover in addition to a long-term viewership opportunities and all this kind of stuff. When you have 140,000 rooms, do you know how that compares to other host cities and availabilities and all that kind of stuff? Because then you're getting into like suburbs and exurbs and trying to make sure that, okay, if we stay an hour away, we can still get to our venue, or 90 minutes away, we can still get to our venue. I mean, how that 140 is there, and then how does it drift out and I guess expand? How does the mushroom expand from there? Any clue?
Yeah, absolutely. So the mushroom expands to over, if you were to look at Airbnb, etc., non-traditional, overnight accommodations, we can go up to 200,000 with the suburbs, etc., or more. But we were able to achieve approximately 80% occupancy.
That was my next question.
Yep, 80% occupancy, which was a bit down. So that was down about 4% from last year.
Mm-hmm.
So citywide, we achieved 80% occupancy, but our revenues were higher. Our revenues were higher. So our revenues, we charge more money, right?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, man.
We charge more money. So this was great. While occupancy was down by 4.7%, revenues were up 11%. Okay. So we charge more. So yes, we do need occupancy, but at the end of the day, John, we take money to the bank, right?
Yes.
So a higher percentage occupancy means, you had less rooms to clean, which means your operational expenses are going to be a little bit lower. And ultimately, you're going to take more money to the bank. And that's what hotels were hoping for.
Yeah. And when it comes to the other host cities, have you and your friends in other host cities been able to compare notes about the World Cup? And it's like, well, yeah, we were down 4.7% in occupancy, but we were up 11% in revenue. Do you guys get your own Zoom calls and sit there and compare notes when it comes to the other host cities?
Yeah, I was able to talk to a couple of my colleagues in Toronto, in Canada, and they did extremely well in terms of both occupancy and average daily rate. So they surpassed all the goals that they set for themselves. I didn't get any information on Mexico, but I know the other host cities here in the United States, they did extremely well. They achieved their goals in terms of revenue per available rooms. So the World Cup itself brought in a lot of revenues for hotels.
What about the exchange rate? Since you mentioned Toronto, I mean, I know that not everybody can stay at Sky Dome or sit there and be on King Street and make it an easy walk down to the waterfront to go see what's going on at BMO. Although if you looked at the fans that were there in Toronto, they didn't really care. They're going to go from Yonge and Bloor, and they're going to go all the way down to the lakeshore and not really think about it twice. They're just going to march and have fun. Did the exchange rate and any other taxes that might have been added because of governmental headbutting one way or the other, did that impact revenue north of the border? Any idea?
Not at all. It didn't affect it in a negative way. Because Toronto has the suburbs of Mississauga, all of those spillover cities.
Yeah, you get to go hang out by the airport in Pearson, man. I've done that a lot.
Absolutely. And as you know, they have a well-developed public transportation system. So you can stay in Mississauga, you can stay up in the East End in Pickering, and then you can take the Toronto TTC, Toronto Transport System, right down to the games.
Tourism. I wanted to break that down a little bit. I know that what you're looking for in a perfect world, if you were a host city, is for folks to come in, not come in for just a match. You want them to come in for the match, come in a couple days early. If you're following your club, make sure that you might stay a couple days late. Any idea how tourism was impacted positively? Even line, how tourism numbers came out?
Yeah, so we the numbers we're still trying to audit the what we call unique visitor count,
Mm-hmm.
which are people coming specifically for and staying for the games, right?
Yeah.
So we're still looking at that. But in terms of we have some actual numbers that we can share, right? So in terms of confirmed and defensible numbers, we had 544,000 stadium admissions, right?
Right.
And over 500,000 fan festivals, right? So one of the things that we found was that there were a lot of folks who were just moving around from city to city by car.
Huh.
So by car, and so the midday games, for example, the midday games, people would come in for those games, and then they would move back to where their team was perhaps going to play again. So we had a very mobile visitor base for the World Cup. So unfortunately, some folks were thinking, we're going to host 8 games. People are going to come to Atlanta. They're going to stay for the entire World Cup period. That's not how it works for the World Cup. And I think we're still hanging on to the 1996 Olympics in terms of that impact. But what we need to understand is that the Olympics was a concentrated event, right?
Yeah.
All of the events were in Atlanta. With this one, it was all over North America. So people were very mobile. People were driving. People were flying in, flying out, coming in for their games. And especially the midday games, people were just coming in and then leaving. So we didn't have a lot of long-term stay visitors, very short-term.
So when it comes to the World Cup in host cities, it almost seems like with retention, I guess that's the right word when it comes to tourism retention and folks staying for longer days, it almost seems like it was along the lines of like a Super Bowl or a World Series or something like that, where you're there for whatever game you're attached to, and you're going to kind of drift out to where you were and then come back in. It's not something that's like a World Series if you're staying for like 2 games or 3 games if your team is there for X number of days. It like literally is, I'm going to my Atlanta Falcons game on the weekend, or I'm going to my college football game on the weekend, and then I'm going back to where I came from. Is that an accurate comparison?
That is absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. And I think one of the misconceptions with some of the planners, they thought people were going to come in for the entire period, stay for the entire period. So we can learn from it, right? If we have this mega event again, what we perhaps need to do is create a lot more packages where visitors can experience, for example, Georgia as a whole. So we need to create these packages, engage local vendors as well to be part of these packages, so that we can showcase our city in all its aspects. The back streets of Atlanta, where you go and find some unique culinary experience, right? And package it with, let's say, a visit over to Stone Mountain, right? So we need to do something more of selling Atlanta as a destination, as opposed to just the games themselves and hotel accommodation. That perhaps could entice more economic impact in our economy.
What other lessons are there on the table? Obviously, you mentioned bringing somebody in under the tent and keeping them here and giving them reasons to do that. What other lessons do you think were brought from the World Cup from a hospitality, entertainment, tourism standpoint?
Yeah, we need to have a more agile workforce, just-in-time workforce, as opposed to hiring folks. We're taking you on for the next 2 weeks for the World Cup, right? So we need to have a more agile workforce, work a lot more with contractors who provide these what I like to call just-in-time labor force,
right?
So that you're not saddled with employees on your payroll for 2 weeks,
right.
And then you have that lull, when people are not here to require the services,
and dealing with all that paperwork and filling out all the taxes for 1099ers.
Absolutely.
For every individual that wanders into the door. I know how this plays.
Absolutely.
When it comes to finding out all these other numbers that you're looking for, I know they're kind of trickling in. When do you think, when do I get my big PDF from you about all the final lessons, whether it's dollars, economic, profit and loss? When do I get my big PDF from you?
We should have that ready for you by end of August. We work very fast. So we have the forecast, and then we look at actual numbers after. But we do have some that we can share, as I mentioned earlier. Stadium visitation. Marta, I don't think we give Marta a lot of credit. We really should give Marta some credit here, including myself, right? Marta moved 4.7 million people during the World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
That's massive.
Mm-hmm.
That's massive. So again, John, all of our supported infrastructure, I'm so happy, you can see me smiling. They all work in synchrony, in a very symbiotic relationship to execute this mega event.
And when a city has done it a lot of times,
yes,
it's like you're ready to go. You know what you're getting into.
Yes.
And you're not really surprised by anything. You're ready for anything. You're not surprised by it. And you got to see what happened here in Atlanta, in the Atlanta area, as one of the host cities. So what do you think about the final, by the way? Spain and Argentina, what do you think?
I like to think, well, first I'm biased. I wanted an England France final.
Okay.
However, I like to say KSU is the reason why Spain won.
Mm-hmm.
They used our stadium as their practice facility. So, hey, nothing beats preparation, right? If they had a lousy preparation, they would not have won. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to, as a KSU employee, I'd like to take credit for Spain winning.
Well, and so will the city.
We prepare them well. And, they're here in Atlanta. So they were well prepared. And hence they won the World Cup. So hats off to Spain for sure.
No doubt about it. And especially, and the city of Chattanooga is going to sit there since they've adopted Spain anyway.
Yes.
As their home up at the Baylor School. As our resident sweeper keeper professor, doctor, Dr. Jackson, it's great to have you on to kind of break everything down. And when you do have those final numbers, go ahead and fire them off to me, and we'll have you back to break that stuff all down after Labor Day and let everybody know the real numbers game that happened here. It's great to see you, my friend. Thanks for
Likewise.
Do not be a stranger. We'll catch up with you soon. Hooty hoo.
Will do. Thank you, John. Looking forward to talking again soon.
There he goes, Dr. Leonard Jackson. And like I said, he has so many different specialties and things that he's accomplished over his career. Literally, it's not just the business card. It's not the front. It's like the front, the back, and maybe a second one. I think he's got his own legal pad when it comes to everything that he's accomplished. It's like USC. He's teaching stuff up in the Northeast. Obviously, we talked about what's going on up in Canada, up at Guelph as a Guelph Griffin. I knew that one, and it's Griffin, like not like the city south of here, not Griffon, but Griffin. Hang on, Gyrphon. I had to spell it out. I had to write it, but yeah, a Guelph Griffin. But to get that kind of perspective when it comes to economy and tourism here in the area, it's important as a part of all of the infrastructure to understand the investments that were made and all of these different ideas that come together to make sure that what we saw went off as evenly as possible. And I mean, if you think about it, obviously those transitory folks that come in who want to, come in and see their team and leave. When we got into that conversation with Dr. Jackson late, in our talk about a lot of folks driving in, not really hanging out for like a couple of days. And he brings the point about, okay, in future times, probably with the Copa America, Women's World Cup, those kinds of things happening next couple of years, the idea of keeping folks here in the area and, having them go and sample, suburb here, diaspora here, all that kind of stuff. So I thought that was interesting that it was more of a transitory audience that came in. It was either the folks that were fans of their teams. It's like, okay, fandom is here. Come in a day or two ahead of time, like the Argentines did on more than one occasion. They came in the first time, they knew what to do. They came in the second time, and it was, old hat for them. And then you go on to your next. So the group stage, I think, if we're taking what Dr. Jackson here was bringing to the table during the group stage, because of the transitory nature of the fan, do things where you can bring them in early, hang on to them for a couple of days, and that way they're investing in what's going on in your host city. So I think it's a universal application, what he was talking about. So and that was why I wanted to ask also if he had any comparison research from his friends in other markets. Like, how was LA when it came to being a host city? You mentioned Toronto and what it was like for them. And I asked about the exchange rate. First thing that popped into my head was, okay, you guys hit your numbers north of the border, but did the exchange rate have any impact? Apparently it didn't. So finding out how each individual host city did, and when this means we probably should catch up with our host city folks and see how they're looking at their postmortems and all that kind of stuff. So we may just go ahead and send out bolos there as we continue our learning from what happened in the cup the world was chasing. So it's good to have a sweeper keeper that we can reference when it comes to hospitality management, infrastructure, education, and finding out how a city, its hotels, its restaurants, security and traffic and transportation, all those things come together. And as he mentioned, so for Atlanta, 80% capacity, down 4.7%, but revenue is up 11%. So that's what you're looking for here. And, I'd love to know from the city of Atlanta what their numbers were when it came to their level of investment and, what they had to take care of as a part of the rather large contract, which I think was 3 inches thick, that they had to, sign on to when it came to them being a part of the whole discussion. So, yeah, literally, as we were talking, and you know how I am about my notes, literally, I'm sitting here and I'm taking notes to ask questions. I mean, we do have a base of questions when we wanted to bring in Dr. Jackson in the first place, but then he starts talking about other things. And so it was really cool to be able to break all that stuff down with him. And when he comes up with all the other numbers and all the other host cities, I can't wait for my PDF because, like I said, I want to see how successful everything was on the whole. And I want to see where it all relates to other host cities and preparation and panic. Infrastructure panic, I guess, is probably a new phrase that I'm going to create here. How many surprises were there? How many surprises? And it didn't seem like there were a whole lot of surprises here in Atlanta as a host city where we're based here at SDH. But it didn't seem like there was a whole lot that surprised Atlanta. You knew where you were going to do A. You knew where you were going to do B, C, D, and E. And Abby's like, yes, if they charged less per room, they could have been 95% capacity. That is probably true. But if you look at who was coming in, and this is what I forgot to ask, is it 80% capacity over every day, every room, the entire time, going from, say, June 1st until the last group stage match? So that, or the last knockout. So that would have been what? Midweek last week. So if you subtract 7, you're looking at 22 and 7 is 50. So in a 65-day period, 45-day period. So 6 weeks. So in a 45-day period, June 1st until that last knockout game, what was, if it was at 80% capacity there, and then he mentioned the numbers themselves going from up to, with Airbnbs and such, up to 200,000 rooms capacity. If it was 80%, was it in that window, and how does it compare to other host cities? Like I said, we got Toronto's answer. I know he's working on Mexico's answer, but yeah, when he gets all of the other answers about capacity and infrastructure and surprises and profit and loss and all that kind of stuff, I want to have him back so we can sit there. And if we're doing a PowerPoint presentation, so be it, even though you don't want me doing a PowerPoint presentation. But I think it's an interesting case study economically to find out Atlanta wasn't surprised, but you still ended up with all the investment. You ended up 11% on the good side, even though your rooms were down 5%. You made that up a little bit. But I'm now intrigued to how it will look when he gets all the other information with all the other host cities. How many surprises were there? How many things that had to be done on a snap? That kind of stuff. So we're going to put a bookmark in this particular part of the postmortem when it comes to host cities and such. And it was great to catch up with our resident sweeper keeper, Dr. Leonard Jackson, professor of hospitality management and dealing with economy and tourism up at Kennesaw State University. And once again, thanks to our friend Darius Goodman for steering all of the folks this way. Kevin, when you got to catch up with Kevin Hewitt, we got to catch up with another Chad Gabert, who's been great with numbers and World Cup power impact ratings with players and all that kind of Dr. Morgan as well. So it's been a great resource for us to kind of help find out about all of the stuff that we wander through and take part in when it comes to a tournament like this, but may not necessarily understand everything that goes into it. And so all of these moving parts, and you end up with, from the hospitality element of it, revenue increase, rooms decrease, but it's 5%. So you're talking like 7,000 rooms-ish not used during, I'm guessing, that 6.5 week period, that 45 days. So that's the rundown there. Yeah, I know, me and math. Mayor Dickens said, Abby said they didn't go over the budget. Reimbursement from FIFA and the Fed will cover everything. Boom. There you go. And now, and Abby, to your point, does this apply for all the others? How much was spent? How many of them are in the red? How many of them are in the black? So if Atlanta has figured out, and also corporate sponsorships, being a part of this too, the in-kind relationships, all of this stuff, if Atlanta has figured it out, kind of like how LA figured out the idea of the Olympiad, but if Atlanta has figured it out, they weren't surprised by any of this. And you still ended up with the numbers. So cost and profit and loss was a wash. It was a washout, financially when it comes to city expenses and venues and all this kind of stuff. But from a hospitality perspective, rooms down, revenue up. And so I can't wait for my PDF to find out the comparison study with all the other host markets when that's available, say, in the next 6 weeks or so. But that was great to catch up with Dr. Jackson. He is for real. Now, 9:30, 9:33. Okay. KCD is going to be joining us in about 25 minutes, top of the hour here from the Kaiser Permanente studios. We got another tournament to keep an eye on. And it is the US U19s and head coach Gonzalo Segueras, 21 players representing the U.S. at the U20s, starts on the 24th. So on Friday, I think that's the 24th. So on Friday it starts, goes through August 9th in Mexico. It serves as the qualifying competition for the U20 World Cup in Azerbaijan and Uzbekistan, the Pan Am Games in Lima, Peru, and the 2028 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles. U.S. already qualified since they're a host country. And so Coach Segueras has this group together. They are at the America First training ground, and they are traveling today to go down to Mexico. 15 players, 13 different MLS clubs, 2 from USL Championship, 3 European clubs, and 1 from collegiate soccer. And we catch up with that individual from collegiate soccer here in just a second. The roster heading down: William Lodmell from Sporting Lisbon, Lucas McPartland from St. Louis City, Kane Rizvanovic from Minnesota United. Defenders: Chris Applewhite, Nashville SC, Tristan Brown from Crew, Christopher Cupp, Chicago Fire, Brandon Days from Lou City, Braden Dunham from Furman University, and that kind of teases who we're going to be talking to in a sec. Javon Mussenden from the Revs, and Josh Torquato from FCD. Midfield: Colin Gusky from Orlando City. We know him from Orlando City B. Santi Morales from Inter Miami. Cooper Sanchez is held back, and so we've yet to see an announcement as to who the replacement is going to be because of the injuries with Atlanta United. Cooper Sanchez held back. We'll talk Atlanta United injuries and press conference on the other side of this interview leading into KCD at the top of the hour. Alex Shaw from Messi and Friends. Dylan Vanny from LAG. Forwards: Nemfasa Burkimas, Charlotte. Jaden Contreras, FCD. Den Klapia, RB Leipzig. Shanti Oyharshabal from Athletic Bilbao. Took me a second. Ruben Ramos, LAG. Colton Swan, Charleston Battery. Noah Santos from Portland is joining as a training player during pre-camp in Salt Lake. Haiti, July 25. El Salvador, July 28. Cuba, July 31st. Top 2 in each group. 2 best third-place teams advance to the quarters in Puebla at the turn of the month. Those winners go to the World Cup, go to the Pan Am Games, goes to the Azteca semifinals August 7, hosting the final August 9. Tournament winner also qualifies for 28, but if the U.S. wins, the Olympic berth goes to the runner-up. So there is the rundown. And because of this, we mentioned there's one college player. We already said who it is. Ties to Atlanta United, ties to the area, the pride of Peachtree City, Georgia, Braden Dunham. David says, not sure how many of you are scuffed listeners, but New Jersey Governor Mikey Sherrill talked about economics and getting stuck with the cost. Yeah, she was not happy. Yeah, Mikey Sherrill was not happy about everything that they were stuck with in New Jersey. And, but yeah, and obviously, Cooper, with Jay Fortune out 3 to 4 weeks, Matt Edwards day to day, and it's it's an opportunity for Cooper. But once again, you've got to stay at home and help out your parent club. And yes, I know it does stink, but looking forward to see what the U.S. does in this tournament. And obviously, Cooper is going to have more chances down the line to help represent his country. Speaking of Braden Dunham, caught up with him yesterday in Utah. And I'm hoping it was after practice. I think it was after practice. And got his thoughts about what it's like representing his country, what it's like to be a part of this process, and what he's anticipating when it comes to study hall, group stage, CONCACAF, and how he's improved after his freshman season at Furman. So here is that conversation that we had with Braden Dunham. So, Braden, I guess my first question for you is like this. Usually there's that question when you come back to school is like what I did on my summer vacation. Yeah. You're not really having a summer vacation. You're out there getting ready for important competition. So I know it's only been a couple of days, but what's camp been like so far?
I mean, it's been very good. I mean, the competition is great. The level is very high, and I'm excited to get down to Mexico and prove myself and prove to the whole competition that the U.S. can do well and win it.
Yep. I do want to get into your position group and what it's like with that group of guys coming up here in a bit. But the last time you and I talked, if I'm not mistaken, you were on a bus heading to College Cup activities, either conference or College Cup. I can't remember, but I remember you were on a bus on the interstate.
Yeah.
And you were going through your freshman year. You finished up 7-3, 10 goal contributions. When you look back at your freshman year as you're getting ready for year number 2 at Furman, what sticks with you about that first year there at Furman?
I think I was a solid player, and I think I would like to be more of a leader this year. So I'm going to take what I did last year and step it up a little bit more and lead the team to hopefully a farther run in the NCAAs.
Yeah, you mentioned about being a leader and wanting to be more of a leader. I guess get into that growth process for me a little bit. How do you think you need to improve your being a leader and your leadership qualities and abilities and all that kind of stuff? I guess take from what you learned as a freshman, and how do you think that needs to go forward, I guess?
Okay, so normally I lead by example,
mm-hmm.
but I think now I need to start leading more vocally. So that's communicating all the time, putting people in the right positions. And that's what I think I need to take another big step up.
How difficult is that to kind of train yourself? Because you're used to being the silent guy out there that knows what to do and where to go. How different is that for you to sit there and it's like, okay, I have to vocalize it now? How hard of a transition is that for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is pretty hard for me, but I think just a lot of practice with it, being comfortable with my teammates, having that good relationship is huge. So I'm trying to build those relationships with the guys here and my college teammates as best as I can, so I can then practice it.
I had this vision of you now, like in the back of the bus. It was like, no, you sit here in row 3. You get a window seat. You get an aisle seat. No, you're sitting here at this lunch. I mean, I just have that visualization of how this next step could help out. That's all.
No, not there. Mostly on the field. I don't want to be too bossy.
Well, there's nothing wrong with this. You're not being bossy. You're being authoritative.
All right.
You're being authoritative, and you're helping out the process. It's not. We don't want bossy. We just want the game to improve. You mentioned obviously being a leader and helping out, but what about with your own skill set other than being a leader there at center back, which is where most of your time was last year at Furman? What about on the field with the feet, the legs, and so on?
I think I just need to keep doing what I've been doing, and obviously I need to play quicker to adapt to the higher level of gameplay here, and that's just getting my first touch clean, making the right decision, and making the right decision every time instead of just most of the time.
When I mentioned the position group, the other guys that are listed there as defenders for this camp, it's folks like Tristan Brown, and I know that DCQ was a part of the original list. You got Chris Cups from Chicago, and Rami Zamuda with Birmingham, and Javon Mussenden, who has an Atlanta base as well, and all that, and Neil Pierre. When I mentioned this position group of defenders that was announced to go into this camp, what sticks in your head about you guys as a group?
I mean, it's an extremely solid group, and I think it'll be very hard to earn your spot, and everyone here is going to have to earn their spot because we have such a strong group of defenders. So that's
when you're getting into the tournament here with CONCACAF, how much study hall did you have going in? How much, I guess, independent study did you take going in, getting ready for this particular tournament? Did you sit there and look at group when group was announced and sit there and start looking at tape, or did you wait until you're there at camp to start looking at tape so you could look at it all as a group? Did you do any advanced studying at all?
Honestly, not really, but this pre-camp is really to get ourselves dialed in, and we're focusing more on ourselves during this period. But when we go to Mexico, I definitely think that we will start diving deeper into these different teams and their habits. So,
and obviously you're looking at what's going on with everything, and with this group that's there, obviously you get to add folks like Chris Applewhite that's attached to it, Brandon Days, and Josh Torquato from FCD. When you wear the jersey, it's something that you've done before. For someone who hasn't seen it and might be diving in and watching you for the first time, how would you express what it means to wear that crest and wear it in competitions that mean a lot to the country and to the growth of the program on the whole?
I mean, it's an honor. It's an honor for me. It's an honor for every player here. It's an honor for the staff who get to represent us. And I'm just so grateful for the opportunity to represent more than just myself. I mean, I'm representing a whole country, and the kids that are looking up to me watching these games, I mean, I'm just going to put it all out there just to show them that it can be done. And because it's just, I'm playing for much more than myself.
Mm-hmm. When you are looking at professionals and you're trying to, and I'm not going to say model your game after, because I know that you have your own vision of what you want to be there as a center back. When you're watching professionals and you're watching games casually, who are you sitting there and saying, okay, I kind of can model myself after this individual? Who are you looking up to as those that are center backs and defenders that you're keeping an eye on?
I mean, I've been really intrigued with Kubarsi, the young player of the World Cup, because he's 19 and I'm 19. So it's really cool that he's able to do what he's been doing. And I think that we share similar qualities, like our passing and just like the grit we have playing. So I think we share similar qualities to that. So I've really been enjoying him.
And at the same time, when you have someone like Luis De La Fuente, their coach, who has a lot of trust in someone who is 19. And the other thing that I notice about Kubarsi is his calmness back there. And I know that you're that same way, where I know that you mentioned that you need to be a little bit more vocal, but there's a calmness that's attached to it. And it's not, frantic pointing one way or the other, everything. It's a very calm approach to how you want to have things done back there as a part of the back line. Am I wrong?
No, you're right.
How long did it take you to figure out, okay, this is who I am, even though there are things that you want to work on, but to become comfortable in your own skin? How long did it take to become comfortable in your own soccer skin, I guess?
I think that I've just been growing year by year.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like I was trying to be a certain type of way. It's just the player I've developed into through the past few years. And I think it's been treating me well, so I'm going to keep being me.
And that part of being you started obviously with your time with Atlanta United before you went to Furman. When you think back to your time with Atlanta United to kind of set the foundation for you as you've continued to grow, what sticks in your head from your time with Atlanta United that has helped you going forward?
I think the tactical part of the game and the technical part of the game has really helped, or Atlanta United helped me a lot there.
Yeah.
Whereas in college, it's a little bit more physical and more frantic, chaotic. So I think both of those combined will make me into a good player.
When I mentioned Coach Gonzalo and what he brings to the table, for those who don't get the chance to see him except wandering on a touchline in international competitions, I don't want you to give away any secrets or anything like that, but how is he out there and what's it like learning from him?
He's a great coach. I think he's also very calm. But when he needs to send a message, he definitely sends it.
Yes, absolutely true. Training camp began back on the 17th, and you're heading to Mexico to take care of business there when it comes to the U20s and trying to clinch bids for Pan Am and Summer Olympics and stuff like that. Do you ever get the chance to sit there and just kind of kick back and go, man, this is really cool? What you're able to do and what you're able to try and help do for your country. Do you ever have a chance to sit there and enjoy what's going on?
I have, and I thought about it the other night. Like, this is what I've dreamed of as a little kid, just being able to represent my country on, one of the biggest stages at this age.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just been a dream since I've been little. So I can't wait to get out there and hopefully play. And yeah, it's just been a dream since I've been little.
And we're definitely going to be keeping an eye on it as we go. We'll be watching on the appropriate streaming and TV channels. We just want you to go out there and continue to grow and represent your country as best you can, Braden. It's always great to see you, my friend, and we'll be catching up with you soon. Rest assured, we'll catch up soon.
Thank you.
Braden Dunham, as the USYNT is heading to Mexico today, and they are going to be chasing after bids in a lot of competitions with a deep finish in this tournament. U20 roster heading to Mexico. Qualifiers once again. U20 World Cup Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan. 2027 Pan Am Games in Lima, Peru. 2028 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles. And obviously, once again, U.S. has already qualified for that since they're the host country in 28. But Braden Dunham, 15 players, 13 from MLS clubs, 2 from USL Championship, 3 European clubs, 1 from collegiate soccer. And you just heard from the one who is from collegiate soccer. Braden Dunham, rising sophomore at Furman, 7-3 last year, 10 goal contributions across the board, got them into the College Cup, and also knocked off an 8th seed with a golazo from 40. And we talked to him about that during College Cup. But yeah, it was the video is out there, and it was just an absolute bomb that he hit from 40. Saw the keeper off his line at about a 45-degree angle, sent it toward the net, and it went in. And it was a goal for Furman, as they had a tremendous season last year, looking to duplicate that this year. But first things first for Braden Dunham, and it's an opportunity to take care of 3 things in once for the next couple of weeks when they are down in Mexico and taking care of business at the CONCACAF U20. So it's always great to catch up with Braden Dunham and find out what's going on down there. Okay, coming up in about 10 minutes, once again, it's Casey White. And then at 10:30, we have an in-depth discussion on the Urban Poverty and Business Initiative set forth by Notre Dame and their local Aspiring Community Entrepreneurs Program and their support from Coca-Cola. The program expanded opportunities to create impact here in the Atlanta area. And so we're going to be catching up with we're going to be catching up with Dr. Michael Morris, the professor of entrepreneurship and social innovation at Notre Dame. And we are also going to be catching up with our friends from Morehouse as well to let you know how it's impacting things locally. And so in addition to the Notre Dame influence, it will be catching up with, once again, our friends from Morehouse as well. So Professor Howard Jean-Denis, faculty director of the UPBI program, partner program at Morehouse. So it's going to be Notre Dame and Morehouse representing at 10:30, and then at 11 o'clock we catch up with Emmanuel Stevens, the women's head coach at Tuskegee. We caught up with Coach Tarpley yesterday and found out about the men's side of things as Tuskegee is coming online for their first ever foray into soccer. And so we're going to catch up with the women's head coach, Emmanuel Stevens, at 11 o'clock. And once again, Professor Howard Jean-Denis from Morehouse, and he will be paired with Dr. Michael Morris from Notre Dame. That's at 10:30. KCD is joining us in about 10 minutes. Okay. Interesting stuff that happened yesterday in the World Cup sphere. A video was released by the head of CONMEBOL, and it was basically locking down the idea that it was going to be a 64-team tournament with Uruguay, Argentina, and Paraguay getting some hosting off the top, and then it going over to Spain, Portugal, and Morocco by the time it was through in 2030. So our friend Rob Harris over at Sky caught up with President Dominguez to find out really what's going on here. He got a bit of the 411 before the video was released. I believe he caught up with Mr. President on an airport tarmac. So here's what Rob Harris found out, courtesy of our friends at Sky.
If you thought the 2026 World Cup was big, requiring so much travel, get ready for 2030 because it's going to be spread across 6 countries. And the boss of South American football has told me he wants 64 teams.
World Cup doesn't belong to us, doesn't belong to FIFA, doesn't belong to UEFA, doesn't belong to CONMEBOL, it belongs to the people. And 100 years, a century, has to be a different party. It has to be taken for give the opportunity. We have to give the opportunity to more countries.
Dominguez has been pushing for this expansion from 48 to 64 teams for some time, but it's met with opposition from his fellow FIFA vice presidents from North America, Asia and Europe. But he is now renewing this push on the back of the recently finished World Cup, where newcomers like Cape Verde weren't rollovers. In fact, they drew at the start with eventual champions Spain.
I think that this have shown that 48 teams was a totally successful World Cup.
2030 will be staged across 6 countries in Uruguay, Paraguay, Argentina, Spain, Portugal and Morocco. But the current plan is only to have a game each in the South American countries to mark 100 years of the World Cup, which began in Uruguay in 1930. But Dominguez wants the South American countries to have an entire group each.
Will you have more games in South America in 2030?
I hope so. Yeah, for sure.
There will be many challenges in 2030, regardless of expansion, with teams that start in South America having to switch from winter to summer in Europe and North Africa, as well as the huge distances required to travel in the middle of the tournament. FIFA President Gianni Infantino has been advancing the potential to expand to 64 teams, even though the 2026 World Cup was just the first since going from 32 to 48. It would see the number of matches grow from 104 to 128. It would be a vast group stage to go from 64 teams to a round of 32. Alejandro Dominguez showed that this is a live discussion that will dominate the world of football politics in the coming months. Is the world ready for 128 matches at a World Cup? We've only just had one completed with a record 104 games. And that involved a lot of travel. Prepare for even more in 2030.
Rob Harris from Sky breaking that down. And I will say this. It's heading to 64. I know David says that he's good at 48. It's heading to 64 because you saw the revenue generation. You saw the viewership. We'll get into the viewership for the final coming up in a bit. And you saw participation and increased participation from other confederations that we hadn't had. Rob mentions Cabo Verde. We can mention DR Congo just the same. But, our friend Ollie Howarth, he's going to be discussing all of this too going forward. But we're heading to 64. And I think that this is probably going to be a hook in the TV negotiations for the next rights holder in the United States. Because remember, Big FOX is done. And now, and I think Telemundo is done as well. And so you're probably going to try and figure out a way to bundle English and Spanish. And you're going to try and figure out 2030 and 2034 and an increased grid to 64 teams. Because if you had, and I know that the notion of breaking attendance records, yeah, you did, but you also had more matches. So when did you break it at the Cabo Verde came in, Alex, I think, as a 3. When you look at the tournament in and of itself, it's, I think that the key to an infrastructure is going to be part of making sure that the 64-team field is okay. The U.S. can handle 64. The U.S. can handle a 48. I'm wondering about, qualifying for the tournament. Yeah. Yeah, they did. Cabo Verde did win their group. Yes, they did. And that was when we caught up with Pico Lopez in Scotland on draw day. We talked about that. But, yeah, they did win their group. And, they did win AFCON. And they made it in that way. So you're going to have a video provider, I'll call it that. Could be a network or a streaming service. They're going to have to probably end up getting both rights, English and Spanish. They're probably going to have to pay billions of dollars because it's 2 tournaments. They would have, yes. Alex, I think they would have been in because they did qualify. I don't think you would have had I don't think you would have had a DR Congo just off the top of my head, because you would have had Morocco and Egypt. And absolutely. No doubt. They won their way in. And it was one of the great stories of this getting into the tournament. But I think that you're going to have this. You're going to have a network provider, whatever the network is. You're going to have to take care of both English and Spanish. I think it's going to behoove FIFA / other organizational bodies. UEFA doesn't want 64. Alexander Sefrin thinks that it's already watered down at 48. And you're going to need infrastructure that can handle 64 teams. And that's also the fact that you're playing early matches in South America to probably help out, and unintended consequences, helping out the infrastructure of the tournament happening the next time, where you're in 3 countries over there. You're helping out infrastructure, whether you believe it or not, by having those kickoff matches in South American countries. So the host has to handle the infrastructure of a 64-team field, which probably means you're going to have more joint country bids. It's almost turning into the 5-ring circus, where it's going to be, all over the place. Multiple countries, multiple locations, what have you. I think you're going to have more multi-country bids, so that way you can handle a 64-team field. Travel's going to be a you-know-what. And whoever the provider is for the streaming service and all of their coverage are going to try and figure out how they can get their money back. And so by having more teams in the field and having more ad breaks, hydration breaks, whatever you want to call them, I think that's another way for that new provider to get some of their money back. So that'll be the fun part there. So we're going to break all this down as we go. And